How much further south will oil prices fall here?
Well, I think they could probably, the President Trump has said he hopes that they go to $50. That's his goal in order to have low cost energy to fund growth in the economy. We can talk about how wise that policy is, but that's a deliberate policy on his part. But I think it could go south of 50. And I think you're in the United States. The Dallas Fed took a survey of, the major oil companies, and they need $65 to drill a new well. So you're talking about, in an atmosphere where you have pretty much soft capex anyway, you're not going to see new exploration in the United States. The production you have is the production you're going to get for a while. And I think something around $45 is where the price of oil stops covering operating expenditures. So this is a significant shift. And if you combine this with the sanctions that we've got on Venezuela and other places, you're talking about 2014 all over again, in a sense. This is a case where the U.S. shale patch is going to get punished and where market share for OPEC is going to increase. And if you look at the heavy oil sector of this, if Venezuela is off limits and you have some Canadian heavy, then Russia turns out to be the big winner here because they've got heavy Urals crude. And, where are China and India going to get their heavy crude if Venezuela is offline? So I think you're looking at sort of a structural decline unless and until these tariffs come off and you have some hope for a revival of growth and a revival of demand. But that does not seem to be in the offing right now, and it's a game of chicken that President Trump is playing. But we'll see how much political pain he and how much political pain the Republican members of Congress can take before someone cries uncle. But he certainly says, as recently as last night, not now and not soon.
Indeed. And as you say, David, lower prices essentially laying the groundwork for what could be a 2014-style shale wipeout in the United States. That, of course, would be something that President Trump would be looking at very closely. But at the same time, market investors here also actively trying to price the impact of these tariffs on global growth and ergo oil demand. But let's talk about the politics here, because as you say, President Donald Trump, of course, wants lower oil prices. This is politically advantageous for him and also aligns with his messaging around cheap energy. But pivoting over to what it means for our region, and of course, lower oil prices are bad news for the Gulf. Yes, we've seen these economies actively diversifying over the last few years, deploying capital into new industries to wean reliance on oil revenue off their public expenditure. But if oil prices move lower from here, just how damaging is that going to be for America's allies in this part of the world, like Saudi Arabia and the UAE?
Well, you have to question what OPEC's motivation was. Was it just really bad timing to announce that they're going to accelerate the taper in the middle of a soft market? Or is this like 2014, and are we seeing essentially a move by Saudi Arabia and at least Arab OPEC to seize market share at a time when shale is vulnerable? For all President Trump's talk about energy dominance, if he wants $50 oil, that's not energy dominance. You're not going to, he can put as much acreage out as he wants. He's not going to get more. So playing the long game, as Saudi Arabia tends to do, I think there's at least a case to be made that this is a move for market share and that they can sustain this for a little while. So I think it will cause some pain, but when you distribute that pain, around the world, the pain's going to be a lot worse in the shale patch than it is in Saudi Arabia. Obviously, higher budget numbers, but a lower threshold for production. So I think it gives Saudi Arabia the ability to, impose a bit more discipline and to ride this out. When President Trump comes to Saudi Arabia, as we believe that he will, he's going to have a lot on his agenda for Saudi Arabia. They're going to be talking about Iran. They're going to be talking about, sort of ending the war in Gaza and trying to expand the Abraham Accords. And they're going to be talking about investment in the United States. So there's a lot on the table for Saudi Arabia, not just the price of oil. There's the whole strategic realignment that President Trump seems to be attempting. So I think there are definitely losers all around in this market, but I think it's worse for the shale patch than it is for Arab OPEC.